I've always wondered, what do they actually look like on the page of the script? Like when you're going to a 10, 15-minute action sequence, what does it say in the script?
They fight. No. I mean, there's different styles. There's some that describe each blow. With John Wick, yeah, there's some stuff there, but it's kind of not as descriptive as a lot of other films.
And I've always wondered, what do they actually look like on the page of the script? Like,
what do you do for relaxation? You said you study
karate. If you can relax doing this, I don't know. No, I read a lot and go horseback riding and stuff like that.
What do you do for relaxation?
Also within this hand gesture, we have our 3 sixes. A 6 here, a 6 here, and a 6 here, which represents the 666 in the book of Revelations in the Bible. Also within this hand gesture, we have our 3 sixes. A 6 here, a 6 here, and a 6 here, which represents the 666 in the book of Revelations in the Bible. Also within this hand gesture, we have our 3 sixes. A 6 here, a 6 here, and a 6 here, which represents the 666 in the book of Revelations in the Bible. Also
Here's another cool thing I love about journaling. You ever go to bed at night and you start thinking about all the stuff you got to do the next day, and it gets kind of intimidating, and your brain starts going, and you're having trouble getting to sleep because you're like, oh yeah, I got to do this, 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 and this. How am I going to remember? Wait, how's my day going to flow? And then you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh yeah, I've got to do this, this. Write it down. The night before, write your to-do list down. Make it long. Put fun stuff on there too, like have my first cup of coffee, hug my wife, call a friend, wear my favorite t-shirt. Put fun, easy stuff on there, because what's fun is the more things you get to cross off the next day. Did it, done, done, done. The more we feel like we accomplished, and we did. But write the list down, and you'll have so much fun crossing them off. I've got 26 things to do today. I've already crossed off 7. I got 19 more to go, and it's not even 10 a.m. Here's another cool thing I love about journalism.
We were looking to get somewhere, so we brought our own PA. We really were trying to get somewhere. And when someone comes in and rips the place up, you're like, well, we're not coming back to Lawrence for a few years. And so we were one of those bands that had ambition, which does you some good because you can get somewhere. But people think, oh, you're a sellout. You're some corporate. We own our own record company. We're owning the game. You should try it. It's not easy, and you will end up owning your own world instead of like eventually getting co-opted. So we did that the best we could. And those days trained me for, that's like a long time ago. That's the Reagan administration. All those days trained me for what I do now. Got my own businesses, and we run them honestly. Everyone gets accounted to, and we do what we want.
And Black.
We were looking to get somewhere, so we brought our own PA. We really were trying to get somewhere. And when someone comes in and rips the place up, you're like, well, we're not coming back to Lawrence for a few years. And so we were one of those bands that had ambition, which does you some good because you can get somewhere. But people think, oh, you're a sellout. You're some corporate. We own our own record company. We're owning the game. You should try it. It's not easy, and you will end up owning your own world instead of like eventually getting co-opted. So we did that the best we could. And those days trained me for, that's like a long time ago. That's the Reagan administration. All those days trained me for what I do now. Got my own businesses, and we run them honestly. Everyone gets accounted to, and we do what we want.
And Black.
We were looking to get somewhere. So
We don't know the true number of people that die in custody in America, whether you die in custody during an arrest, die in custody perhaps while you're in jail or in prison, die in custody perhaps in a healthcare facility. It is not on any form, is it?
No, and the reality of it is that in order for us to understand the whole burden of this injury or disease in this country, we need to know how many people are dying. There's a Deaths in Custody Reporting Act that is in law that is not being fully complied with across this country.
We don't have it mandatory in death certificates to check that box or not?
No,
correct?
We don't even have it on a death certificate. So I've been calling for a checkbox on the U.S. standard death certificate merely to say yes or no whether or not a death is in custody. Because yes, Anton Black is terrible, and so is George Floyd. But there are hundreds of people that are dying from natural disease that they didn't need to die from while incarcerated.
Right, we may
That's
find
just
out,
as important.
How about a little better health care at some of these facilities, right? Or something like that, a pharmaceutical help here or something like that, correct? Like this is the type of things we could discover.
Absolutely, and an objective public health measure. The reason why we know about maternal mortality and why women are dying while in childbirth is because there's a checkbox on the U.S. standard death certificate. The reason why we know smoking is contributing to cancers is because there's a checkbox on the U.S. standard death certificate. Motor vehicle collisions, a checkbox on the U.S. standard death certificate.
And yet not in custody. So would the simplest reform be a federal registry for all cops? Basically, one person described it to me as a social security number for cops.
Absolutely. I mean, law enforcement should have unique identifiers. Right now, they do not. So there
across the board, whether you're in Greensboro, Maryland, or New York City.
Absolutely. But on top of that, in order to really properly put information into this index, you need to make sure that these records are publicly available. Because we saw, right, in this instance, 32 complaints people were unaware of. 22 of them, which had to do with the use of a taser. This would have been critical information.
What we saw there with Thomas Webster, did he follow this definition?
Not in my opinion. No, he did not. But I think it's important to remember that, de-escalation is just words on a page unless we train our police officers how to de-escalate. It's not a skill that we're necessarily born with. We have to be trained how to do it. As far as I know, Officer Webster had never been trained how to do it. Did he employ those tactics? No. Were they appropriate to the situation? I'm not sure, but they certainly were not used.
What we saw there with Thomas Webster, did he follow this definition?
Not in my opinion. No, he did not. But I think it's important to remember that, de-escalation is just words on a page unless we train our police officers how to de-escalate. It's not a skill that we're necessarily born with. We have to be trained how to do it. As far as I know, Officer Webster had never been trained how to do it. Did he employ those tactics? No. Were they appropriate to the situation? I'm not sure, but they certainly were not used.
What we saw there with Thomas Webster. I guess the question is, looking at a layperson, Paul, is, what was the rush? Why not let him sit in the car for half an hour and cool off? I mean, I like that could have. It just seemed like what was wrong with just sort of stepping back?
That would have been the best police practice. It's true that police officers are human beings, but they're human beings who are licensed to kill. And in this context, you have to wonder about how much of a difference Anton Black's mental illness made. So we know that sometimes police officers buy into this stereotype that people who are mentally ill are more dangerous or more likely to commit violent crimes. And all of the data tells us that that's not true.
Good Sunday morning, and I hope you're enjoying your Labor Day weekend. This morning, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to take a deep dive into the debate over policing in America. There are few cases of policing more notorious or consequential than that of George Floyd. Floyd's in-custody death at the hands of police officer Derek Chauvin and 3 others on May 25, 2020 sparked a huge national debate about defunding police. It set off street demonstrations, and it made the phrase Black Lives Matter a household term. But it's another case that happened before George Floyd in the small town of Greensboro, Maryland, with similarities and connections to the George Floyd case that we're actually going to examine in depth today. First reported by Dateline last month by Lester Holt and supervising producer Dan Slepian. The death of a young man named Anton Black in police custody touches on so many fault lines we've been debating about policing over the last few years: race, mental health, escalation versus de-escalation, police accountability, and the role of the medical examiner, just to name a few. In this morning's special edition of Meet the Press, we're going to review what happened to Anton Black, how he died, how the cause of death was determined, and perhaps most important, how a police officer with a history of violence in another jurisdiction was even allowed to be on the job. And in each step of the way, I'm going to talk to experts on policing, a scholar on race, criminal justice, the president of a police defense fund, and the director of the Innocence Project, as well as a former medical examiner. But let's start by meeting Anton Black, a star athlete whose death has raised so many questions about policing in America.
alcohol at bars, we can smoke tobacco products in parks, and yet we can't have a bar or a lounge for cannabis, and we can't consume cannabis in most places. It's unfortunate that there is this hypocrisy that still very much exists in this conversation. There are inevitably lingering feelings of reefer madness where regulators and politicians don't want to have open cannabis consumption in city parks or on street corners, for example. But it just brings up a problematic double standard because you have tobacco consumption, which is legal in many places in public, and now you have a situation with cannabis consumption, which is very different. And in fact, here in Colorado, where we were the first to legalize and implement adult use cannabis laws, there is still very few places where you can actually legally get high. Really, the only place you can legally consume cannabis of any kind in Colorado is one of the very few lounges or in a private residence. And even if you're in a private residence, you need the homeowner's permission. So it's complicated and it's unfortunate and it's pretty embarrassing too, because we've regulated cannabis to an extent that now our model is known as the Colorado model, and it's been adopted in so many markets all across the world, including California, Canada, and other localities. But really, this is one embarrassing aspect of the Colorado model, is that we still haven't figured out public consumption or social use. Unfortunately, we did see, along with that decrease of overall cannabis citations and an increase in public consumption citations, we did see some alarming numbers there. And it still did affect communities of color to a greater extent than it did white people. And so we still are facing some of the same problems that we did in a prohibitionist era, now in a legal era. It's unfortunate that there is this hypocrisy that still very much exists in this conversation. We can consume alcohol at bars, we can smoke tobacco products in parks, and yet we can't have a bar or a lounge for cannabis, and we can't consume cannabis in most places. At the same time, you can have pretty much anything you want legally delivered to your door. It's about time that regulators start treating cannabis as the actual substance that it is. Inevitably, the comparisons between cannabis and alcohol are real because they're both now increasingly recreationally available substances. But when alcohol kills nearly 80,000 Americans a year, according to the CDC, and cannabis is killing 0 per year, and that goes back decades, also according to the CDC, then there's a major hypocrisy at play, and it just pains me and others who just want sensible drug policy. There's no reason for this.
Okay. That last entry in this page is service to the Capitol does not sound good right now.
Correct.
What does that mean?
The members of the VPT tel at this time were starting to fear for their own lives. There was a lot of yelling, a lot of very personal calls over the radio. So it was disturbing. I don't like talking about it, but that there were calls to say goodbye to family members, so on and so forth. It was getting, for whatever the reason was on the ground, the VP detail thought that this was about to get very ugly.
And did you hear that over the radio?
Correct.
Okay. What was the response by the agents, Secret Service agents who were there?
Everybody kept saying, you know, at that point it was just reassurances, or I think there were discussions of reinforcements coming, but again, it was just chaos. They were just yelling.
Obviously, you conveyed the disturbing, but what prompted you to put it into an entry, as it states there, service with the
If
Capitol?
they're running out of options and they're getting nervous, it sounds like that we came very close to either service having to use lethal options or worse. Like at that point, I don't know. Is the VP compromised? Is the detail I don't know. Like, we didn't have visibility, but it doesn't. If they're screaming and saying things like "say goodbye to the family," like, the floor needs to know this is going to a whole nother level soon.
Maloney testified that it would have been feasible, as commentators on television were suggesting, for President Trump to immediately appear at the podium in the press room to address the nation.
Would it have been possible at any moment for the president to walk down to the podium in the briefing room and talk to the nation at any time between when you first gave him that advice at 2 o'clock and 4:17 when the video statement? Would that have been possible?
Would it have been possible?
Yes.
Yes, it would have been possible.
We just heard Mr. Cipollone say that President Trump could have gone to the press briefing room to issue a statement at any moment. To give you a sense of just how easy that would have been, let's take a look at a map of the West Wing. As we saw earlier, the president's private dining room is at the bottom of the map. The press briefing room is at the top, highlighted in blue. And the Rose Garden, where the president ultimately filmed his go home video, is on the right next to the Oval Office, and that's highlighted in green. Ms. Matthews, how quickly could the president have gotten on camera in the press briefing room to deliver a statement to the nation?
So as you outlined, it would take probably less than 60 seconds from the Oval Office dining room over to the press briefing room. And for folks that might not know, the briefing room is the room that you see the White House press secretary do briefings from, with the podium and the blue backdrop. And there's a camera that is on in there at all times. And so if the president had wanted to make a statement and address the American people, he could have been on camera almost instantly. And conversely, the White House press corps has offices that are located directly behind the briefing room. And so if he had wanted to make an address from the Oval Office, we could have assembled the White House press corps probably in a matter of minutes to get them into the Oval for him to do an on-camera address.
This should happen next week. This is going to happen next week.
There's a long list of things Congress needs to get done in a very short period of time. Are you confident that the votes are actually there to get this passed?
Yes, I am.
16 Republicans voted to move along with this, but this is still not done, and it's being tweaked here. So I want to ask you about some of the things that have been proposed. You have skeptics on both the right and the left for this, right? Bernie Sanders has said he doesn't like it. It's a blank check to profitable companies. Rick Scott of Florida, Republican, has compared it to corporate welfare. A former labor secretary from the Clinton administration called it pure extortion. That doesn't sound like this is truly bipartisan, as you called it. This sounds like this is fairly controversial.
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's clearly bipartisan. You don't get 64 votes in the Senate every day, right?
But on this final bill, you think, despite these detractors,
this will be
a
big bipartisan vote in the House and the Senate. Yes, I believe so. Now, also, I fully dispute Senator Sanders' characterization of this. It isn't a blank check. There are many strings attached. Strings attached, companies can't use this money to build facilities in other countries. Companies who accept this money can't then turn around and be building facilities in China for leading edge technology. There's a lot of strings attached around the quality of jobs that have to be created, working with small contractors and minority-owned contractors. There are labor protections. So to say it's a blank check is just dead wrong.
You know, the climate deniers are really in some ways similar to all of those almost 400 law enforcement officers in Uvalde, Texas, who were waiting outside an unlocked door while the children were being massacred. They heard the screams, they heard the gunshots, and nobody stepped forward. And God bless those families who've suffered so much. And law enforcement officials tell us that's not typical of what law enforcement usually does. And confronted with this global emergency, what we're doing with our inaction and failing to walk through the door and stop the killing is not typical of what we are capable of as human beings. We do have the solutions, and I think these extreme events that are getting steadily worse and more severe are really beginning to change minds. We have to have unity as a nation to come together and stop making this a political football. It shouldn't be a partisan issue. We have to have unity as a nation to come together and stop making this a political football. It shouldn't be a partisan issue.
You know, it's interesting. Public sentiment on climate is certainly, in some ways, growing more urgent. And you've made notice that rank and file Republicans are growing more concerned about the climate. But, you know, public opinion is on one side on abortion, is on one side on guns, is on one side on climate, and yet you see that it hasn't mattered to some of the decisions that are made in our politics. How do you break through this?
Well, you're exactly right, and public sentiment is changing, but our democracy is broken. And in order to solve the climate crisis, we're going to have to pay attention to the democracy crisis. The same reason that it's seemingly impossible for the Congress to pass legislation banning these weapons of war, these assault rifles that are being used to murder children in classrooms and create hundreds of mass casualty events already this year, and that's getting worse. The same reason we can't pass legislation to, for example, reinstate the ban on assault weapons is the same reason that we can't pass climate legislation. We have a minority government. We have the filibuster still, which ought to be eliminated. We have big money playing much too large a role in our politics, lobbyists for the fossil fuel industry, and they're still running all of these advertisements trying to convince people that it's not that bad or they've got this, don't worry about it. We have got to rise to this challenge, Chuck. You know, the climate deniers are really in some ways similar to all of those almost 400 law enforcement officers in Uvalde, Texas, who were waiting outside an unlocked door while the children were being massacred. They heard the screams, they heard the gunshots, and nobody stepped forward. And God bless those families who've suffered so much. And law enforcement officials tell us that's not typical of what law enforcement usually does. And confronted with this global emergency, what we're doing with our inaction and failing to walk through the door and stop the killing is not typical of what we are capable of as human beings. We do have the solutions, and I think these extreme events that are getting steadily worse and more severe are really beginning to change minds. We have to have unity as a nation to come together and stop making this a political football. It shouldn't be a partisan issue. Many of Trump's followers took to social media to declare that they were ready to answer Trump's call. One user asked, "Is the 6th D-Day? Is that why Trump wants everyone there?" Another asserted, "Trump just told us all to come armed. Fucking A, this is happening." A third took it even further. "It will be wild" means we need volunteers for the firing squad. Jim Watkins, the owner of 8kun, the fringe online forum that was birthplace of the QAnon extremist movement, confirmed the importance of Trump's tweet.
When did you first decide to go to D.C. for January 6th?
When the President of the United States announced that he was going to have a rally, then I bought a ticket and went.
Watkins was at the Capitol on January 6th. Some who have since been indicted for their involvement in the attack on the Capitol also responded. One of them posted on the 19th, quote, "Calling all patriots, be in Washington, D.C., January the 6th. This wasn't organized by any group. DJT has invited us, and it's going to be wild." Some of the online rhetoric turned openly homicidal and white nationalist, such as, "Why don't we just kill them, every last Democrat, down to the last man, woman, and child? And it's time for the day of the rope. White revolution is the only solution." Others realized that police would be standing in the way of their effort to overturn the election. So one wrote, "I'm ready to die for my beliefs. Are you ready to die, police?" Another wrote on the Donald.win, "Cops don't have standing if they're laying on the ground in a pool of their own blood." The Donald.win was an openly racist and anti-Semitic forum. The Select Committee deposed that site's founder, Jody Williams. He confirmed how the president's tweet created a laser-like focus on the date of January the 6th.
I mean, people have been talking about going to D.C. as soon as the election was over.
And do you recall whether or not the conversation around those dates centered on the 6th after the president's tweet?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, after it was announced that, he was going to be there on the 6th to talk, yes. Then anything else was kind of shut out, and it was just going to be on the 6th.
Okay. And that was pretty clearly reflected in the content on the site?
Yeah, sure.
On that site, many shared plans and violent threats. "Bring handcuffs and wait near the tunnels," wrote one user. A commenter replied, suggesting zip ties instead. One post encouraged others to come with body armor, knuckles, shields, bats, pepper spray, whatever it takes. All of those were used on the 6th. The post concluded, "Join your local Proud Boys chapter as well." The Donald.win featured discussions of the tunnels beneath the Capitol complex, suggestions for targeting members of Congress, and encouragement to attend this once-in-a-lifetime event. While Trump supporters grew more aggressive online, he continued to rile up his base on Twitter. He said there was overwhelming evidence that the election was the biggest scam in our nation's history. As you can see, the president continued to boost the event, tweeting about it more than a dozen times in the lead up to January the 6th.
What do you do for a living?
Professional rock star.
Professional rock star. Let's go, baby. Thank you. What do you do for a living?
What was your gut feeling the night of January 5th?
I believe I sent a Slack message to someone that said something along the lines of, "When people are shooting each other tomorrow, I will try and rest in the knowledge that we tried." And so I went to, I don't know that I slept that night, to be honest with you. I was on pins and needles because, again, for months I had been
begging and anticipating and attempting to raise the reality that if we made no intervention into what I saw occurring, people were going to die. And on January 5th, I realized no intervention was coming. And even as hard as I had tried to create one or implement one, there was nothing, and we were at the whims and the mercy of a violent crowd that was locked and loaded.
And just for the record, this was content that was echoing statements by the former president, but also Proud Boys and other known violent extremist groups.
Yeah.
I also asked leadership to come up with a safety plan for members. I'm actually very concerned about this because we have who knows how many hundreds of thousands of people coming here. We have Antifa. We also have, quite honestly, Trump supporters who actually believe that we are going to overturn the election. And when that doesn't happen, most likely will not happen, they are going to go nuts.
Tuesday, and will it include some of Cipollone?
Well, we're going to continue the story of Donald Trump's attempt to overthrow the 2020 presidential election. And at the last hearings, we showed how lots of doors were closing on him, if not all the way, at least part of the way. In the state legislatures, that didn't work for him. The Department of Justice mini coup didn't really work for him. The attempt to get DOJ to say that the election was corrupt had not come through. The effort to intimidate election officials like Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger in Georgia had not succeeded. But now he was turning his attention to January the 6th. And we're going to get to use a lot of Mr. Cipollone's testimony to corroborate other things we've learned along the way. He was the White House counsel at the time. He was aware of every major move, I think, that Donald Trump was making to try to overthrow the 2020 election and essentially seize the presidency. And so I considered his testimony valuable.
That's how we did it in the 90s, son!
Can't catch my breath, man.
Really? Should I try mouth stuff?
What is this, a Tinder date? Get off of me. Oh, shit.
Mr. Dante! I need an ambulance at the Quick Stop!
Saved my life, man. Wish I had a life worth saving.
What are you talking about?
Sit around and watch the same movies over and over.
I always thought you could have made a cool movie.
You're right. I'm living on borrowed time. No more watching movies.
I'm gonna make a movie! What's the movie gonna be about? It's about him working here. Meta.
Everything in the script is something either me or someone I know said.
I'm not even supposed to be here today. Maybe Jay and Silent Bob could be characters.
Jay and Silent Bob are like C-3PO and R2-D2. They've been here since the first movie, which was the last time they were cool. But they've been with the franchise so long, they still give them cameos and put them on the lunchboxes.
Snifty Booches! Please tell me why.
I believe in you. You put in that stuff you used to say about the Death Star contractors.
Get sued by Disney? No way.
Now that's what I call acting!
Take off your pants. What the hell is this?
I added a scene where you get shot.
I'm not letting you kill me off in the third act. What if there's a sequel?
A sequel? What am I, a hack?
I think it needs more weed.
Immersive learning is brilliant. I think learning off of a page is really tough. And so you put someone in an environment where they can look and experience and really start to feel things. You remember better, you understand things better.
Being able to see it in front of you happening, all the power's in your hands.
It's another way to sort of traverse that space and learn different things.
It's exciting because there's more potential for new, fresh ideas.
Me say, why didn't Putin invade Ukraine when his boyfriend Trump was in office? I mean, Trump stood with him at Helsinki and defended him over our own intelligence agencies. So I was just asking the question, and maybe you do have an answer. Why not when Trump was in office? It would seem to be the more logical place.
No, he didn't invade because he didn't need to. Because you only roll out the tanks when you think you're out of options. And Putin had a grand asymmetric strategy to dismantle NATO from within. And it was working. When the commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces calls NATO obsolete, you are on the road to a fifth column victory. And that's what he was doing. And as a matter of fact, we know now in 2018. Thank you.
Maybe.
Well, we know this. In 2018, Trump wanted to pull out of NATO. And it was John Kelly and John Bolton who had to hold him down like a rabid dog to stop him from doing that. And if Trump had won a second term, he would have done it. But Biden being elected caused Putin's plan to go up in smoke.
We don't know what he would have done. We don't know why he did what he did.
Now
we don't know.
It's wound up backfiring.
Trump generally did what he wanted to do, no matter who held him down and said what.
One of the things that Trump always said, though, was that he wanted Europe to be more in charge of its own defenses. And nobody has done more to advance that cause than Vladimir Putin by doing this invasion. Because now you have, when a country like Sweden or a country like Switzerland has said, hey, we're going to send weapons to Ukraine, or a country like Germany has said, we're going to increase our defense spending to a significant portion of our GDP. You've messed up as Vladimir Putin strategically, that you have provoked them to do the opposite of what you wanted.
This is what's so surprising to me about Putin. We always knew he was evil, but nobody ever called him dumb. And now he looks dumb. He looks dumb and not powerful.
Yes.
I mean, I honestly, I was wrong. I thought he was not going to invade. I thought it was just brinksmanship. But now, like, this could really go so bad for him. I mean, the Russians have had a revolution before.
Oh, yeah.
And when you have the morale of the army, we know, is where it is, when you have the economy tanking the way it is, it looks like they pulled back the curtain and the Wizard of Oz is just this old man with a sound machine.
Oh, yeah, no.
This opinion is dark, it is incredibly dangerous, and it is not just about a woman's right to choose. It is about much more than that. And I hope people now are fully aware of what we're up against, because the only answer is at the ballot box to elect people who will stand up for every American's rights. And any American who says, look, I'm not a woman, this doesn't affect me, I'm not black, that doesn't affect me, I'm not gay, that doesn't affect me. Once you allow this kind of extreme power to take hold, you have no idea who they will come for next.
It's obvious. How old are you?
35.
And you wear a bow tie.
Yeah, I do. I do.
So this is...
No, I know. You're right. No, let me just go. No, come on.
And listen...
This is the moment that Tucker Carlson became a villain. I'll prove it to you, but let's just run it back. This is 2004, and Jon Stewart annihilates him on his own show.
I have privately, amongst my friends, and also in occasional newspapers and television shows, mentioned this show as being bad. And I wanted to, I felt that wasn't fair, and I should come here and tell you that I don't, it's not so much that it's bad as it's hurting America.
Yeah.
Stop. Stop hurting America.
Okay, now
and come work for us, because we, as the people.
How do you pay?
The people, not well.
Better than CNN, I'm sure.
But you can sleep at night. See, the thing is, we need your help. Right now you're helping the politicians and the corporations, and we're left out there to mow our lawns.
You just said we're too rough on them when they make mistakes.
No, you're not too rough on them. You're part of their strategies. You're partisan, what do you call it, hacks. You're doing theater when you should be doing debate, which would be great.
No, it's
not honest. What you do is not honest. What you do is partisan hackery. My point is this. If your idea of confronting me is that I don't ask hard-hitting enough news questions, we're in bad shape, fellas. What you do is partisan hackery, and I'll tell you why I know it.
You have John Kerry on your show, and you sniff his throne, and you're accusing us of partisan hackery?
Absolutely.
You've got to be kidding, man.
You're on CNN. The show that leads into me is puppets making crank phone calls. What is wrong with you? You have a responsibility to the public discourse, and you fail miserably.
School, I think.
You need to go to one.
After this, the head of CNN canceled this show, ended shows like this on the network altogether, because Jon Stewart pointed out something very obvious. No, it's not just that Tucker Carlson wears a bow tie, it's everything that bow tie stands for. Tucker Carlson is a sham, a joke. He bounces around for a while. He goes over to MSNBC. He has a show for a minute. That disappears. And now he is left off camera and out of the spotlight. Things you see him doing in this time are like going on Bubba the Love Sponge and saying horrible things about people using literal racial slurs. And then Bill O'Reilly's spot opens up on Fox News. And Tucker has a few options. Is he going to debate folks and get to the truth and reveal what the actual issues are and what's important to regular Americans? No. He hates regular Americans. He looks at that audience at Crossfire and still probably hears them laughing at him. He pictures the kid in the red hoodie and the dad with the floppy dad hat yucking it up at this joke of a fake journalist, Tucker Carlson. He will abandon journalistic integrity so much that Fox has no choice but to argue that he's not a journalist in a court of law. In actual lawsuits, they argue he is not there to report facts and find the truth. Rather, he is there for entertainment. Sadly, he's not funny enough to make it on Comedy Central, but he is a big enough joke to yuck it up to all those white supremacist assholes over on Fox News. Now he's the villain, and he will do everything that Jon Stewart criticized him for. Tearing the country apart at all costs, because otherwise he'd have to face the monster he is and come to terms with the damage he's done. By the way, I always like to give a little gift to people who stick around to the end of the video. Jon Stewart tweeted about this recently. On March 11th of 2021, he tweeted, "I called Tucker Carlson a dick on national television. It's high time I apologize to dicks. Never should have lumped you in with that terrible person." There you have it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and, recycle. I don't know. Compost. Go one day without meat. Whatever makes you happy. Going a day without meat probably won't make you happy, but find something that makes you happy.
Told you about tribute concerts for the late Foo Fighters drummer Taylor Hawkins. Now, 12-year-old phenom Nandi Bushell revealed some news to us. Take a listen.
Vlad, I saw you talked about the new upcoming tribute concert for Taylor. Well, I have some news. I'm going to be performing in Wembley Stadium with Mr. Girl, and I'm super excited. It's a privilege, and I'm honoured. Thank you so much, CBS, for your support and kindness. I have to head off for school. Peace out.
You heard right. Nandi will be joining the Foo Fighters once again, joining the lineup for a tribute concert in London in September. Last year, of course, she challenged Dave Grohl to a virtual drum battle. She ended up sharing the stage with the band in Los Angeles.
Shouldn't you ask Shauna to send you to...
Shauna already tweeted that we're going.
Oh, really? Did she really? Seriously?
She really did. I mean,
we or you?
All of us? I think she said me and Vlad.
Oh, I don't know. Why don't you get in that DeLorean and go back in time and include all of us?
There you go.
Vlad, you gotta go. You gotta.
These two came from came to us as pups, and we've been loving them since. So neither one of these know the bad side of humans. So the wolf helps us activate a primal side of us that is more connected, more grounded, more clear-minded. We consider the wolf the healer of the human heart.
So the wolves that come here have an array of trauma, and we see the same thing in the youth that come here. from severe physical abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, and then also young people who have never been able to be seen because the humans in their life want them to be something other than who they are. It's just natural for wolves to accept the past to make room for new things.
As a kid, I lost a lot of people. I watched family members pass away. I had my only uncle that took care of me in my arms pass away. I held on to those deaths very close, and I think that's probably why I didn't socialize, because I didn't want that to happen again. I just started crying, and everything just came out. It was a big turn for me, being able to do that.
We call it hiking, for the wolf is migrating. You can see it in their face, they're almost like, oh. In that moment, I saw miracles happening right in front of my eyes.
Not a lot of people, when they're applying for a beauty marketing job, can say they majored in beauty and fragrance in college.
We're very oriented toward invention, more so than tradition.
How often is the curriculum critiqued, updated?
More than once a year. No starving artists at SCAD.
No starving artists. And how is that?
You know, creativity is really about invention that's relevant. We don't teach anything that you can't get a good job in. Our students want to work at Disney, Google, L'Oreal, and those businesses want to hire, and they do hire from SCAD.
Big developments in Washington on a possible new package for gun regulations. As Ed O'Keefe reports, President Biden and majority of senators are behind the bill that finally emerged from bipartisan negotiations last night.
The motion is agreed to.
Overnight, the Senate took its first steps towards passing major gun-related legislation in an attempt to address recent mass shootings in New York, Texas, and California. The bill is a bipartisan deal that would expand gun background checks for people under 21, allowing up to 10 business days to review juvenile and mental health records. It provides federal money for states enacting new red flag laws designed to temporarily seize guns from people deemed dangerous. And it closes the so-called boyfriend loophole, preventing partners convicted of domestic abuse who live outside a victim's home from buying a gun.
We have a chance to break this 30-year period of silence. It is a compromise. It is a bipartisan compromise.
There's also hundreds of millions of dollars more for mental health and safety resources in schools, plus tough new penalties for those that buy and then turn around and sell a weapon to anyone barred from owning guns.
I want to make sure we actually do something useful, something that is capable of becoming a law.
The National Rifle Association opposes the agreement, saying it does little to truly address violent crime and opens the door to unnecessary burdens on the exercise of Second Amendment freedom. But that doesn't seem to bother negotiators, eager to show Congress can do something, anything, to address gun crimes.
It's a good start, and I think it's going to give us a lot of help for children.
As we mentioned, President Biden is supportive of this plan. Senate leaders anticipate it can be passed by the end of this week, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she hopes to hold a vote on it as soon as possible.
Political advertising. You may have seen this new online ad from Missouri U.S. Senate candidate Eric Greitens. Take a look. It shows the former GOP governor holding a gun and supposedly hunting moderates in his own party, calling them rhinos. That would mean Republicans in name only. Facebook has banned the ad, and Twitter flagged it for abusive behavior. But guess what? If his campaign was to buy commercial advertising slots on local TV, an industry expert tells us that CBS news stations would have to air it. And that is for sure true when it comes to lies. Several candidates in other states have already used TV ads to repeat false claims of fraud in the 2020 election. And now you might think that broadcast stations like this one could reject such outright lies. But in fact, we have no choice but to air them no matter how blatant or misleading. Be advised.
The liberal pro-Biden, pro-China Wall Street insider.
Every election year, it seems like politicians hit us with a 1-2 combination of spin.
Alex Mooney repeatedly disrespects veterans.
And scorn.
Reckless, dangerous, and irresponsible.
It's all part of a long tradition of using the public airways to persuade, and you might even say manipulate, American voters.
3, 2, 1, 0.
But while your regular, everyday commercial advertisers can sometimes face allegations of stretching the truth,
you'll get the best 5G network.
They're at least required by federal law to back up their claims with facts. You should know those rules do not apply to political candidates.
Don't assume that the political ad that you hear contains true information.
Joseph Watson guided the George W. Bush administration on telecommunications policy and is now a professor at the University of Georgia.
So a cereal company can't lie about their cereal, but a candidate can lie about their politics.
That is absolutely true.
And lately, he says the lying has gotten both bolder and more frequent.
It has not been historically as much of a problem prior to 2016. I would say after 2016, the world has changed a lot.
Watson points to commercials like this one from President Biden's 2020 campaign.
If Trump gets his way, Social Security benefits will run out in just 3 years from now.
It earned 4 Pinocchios from the Washington Post fact checker, a rating reserved for whoppers.
The thought of Americans who are living on fixed incomes thinking that's going to go away is terrifying.
Yeah, and here we have that lie approved by Joe Biden.
Absolutely, yeah.
But of course, not all lies are created equal. In this election cycle, there's one lie above all the others.
We won by a lot, not just a little bit. We won by a lot.
A lie that stands out in terms of sheer repetition.
Blue state liberals stole the election from President Trump.
I'll make sure our elections are never stolen again.
The amount of misinformation we're seeing in a midterm cycle is more than I've seen in the past in a presidential election cycle.
Wow.
That's what concerns me about 2024. If this is what the midterm looks like, and the ads are this aggressive and contain so much misinformation, what is it going to look like in the 2024 presidential cycle?
So why, you may fairly ask, would television stations air campaign commercials we know to be wrong?
If you're watching this ad right now, it means you're in the middle of watching a fake news program.
The answer is we must. And if you don't believe me, here's Bill Whittle, who oversees advertising for our affiliate WFSB in Hartford, Connecticut.
Have you ever rejected a political ad?
No, I haven't.
In how many years?
20.
He showed us how he reviews ads from political candidates.
And this is where I watch the spot to make sure that it conforms to the rules and regulations.
We notice there is an option to reject the commercials, but not for lying.
They have to say it's paid for by, the candidate has to use their name, and it has to be on the screen for at least 4 seconds.
Everything else, fair game.
Pretty much.
The rules were set almost 90 years ago by a law that states broadcasters have no power of censorship over any legally qualified candidate for office. And it requires stations to offer their lowest available rates ahead of an election.
Is it ever frustrating knowing that you have to press play on an ad that has falsehoods in it?
Yes, it is, definitely.
Does that cause any trouble for the station? Do you get phone calls about it?
We get a ton of calls.
2, 1,
And take it.
In addition to accepting candidate ads, broadcasters must run them without edits. Although, as Watson sees it, there is maybe one potential option for stations interested in flagging ads from candidates.
They could put a disclaimer at the start of an ad that might say, you know, the following is a paid political advertisement that may contain information that's not been verified or validated. There should be no preclusion to do that, but the challenge for broadcasters is any disclaimers that they put at the start of an ad can't be paid for by the candidate.
I don't see them doing that.
No.
What about allowing media companies like CBS and the other big broadcasters to step in and reject ads that are false?
Who watches The Watchmen?
Who watches us, you mean? So if you empower a government body to police the truth, that's problematic. If you empower media companies to step in and filter the ads, that's problematic. And so we're left with what we have.
That's exactly right. There really are no easy solutions to resolving this issue, and that's why it's such a conundrum.
No easy solutions. People are only restrained by their own sense of shame. And we should mention that 1934 law applies only to broadcasters on public airwaves, so not cable networks, not social media companies. They are free to remove or reject misleading political content. I wanted to do this piece because I hear from people online who are saying, how dare CBS air that ad? You know there are lies in it. We don't have any choice. It's the law.
This is fascinating.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense, and it's eye-opening, but I have a couple of questions. One, who watches The Watchmen?
Yeah.
And I might be asking myself that, looking in the mirror reflection. But then this Communications Act of 1934. Has there been efforts to change it? And is there a slippery slope if you do? Like, how do you determine what's a lie? Isn't that the big question?
The only option, I think, would be to take the political law from 34 and apply it to cable and online, which would just increase the platforms for ads. It would mean that everybody has to accept everything. The tragedy and the triumph of America is that there is no ultimate backstop to preventing political lies, except for the American people.
But the candidates
trust one another.
But Tony, the candidates know they're putting on stuff that is a lie. So when they say, my name is Tony DeCopel and I approve this ad,
that means they've approved it. They've approved the lie. They can say anything they want.
They put their name on it.
They put their name on it. That's the only requirement. And they used to be restrained by shame. But shame is the thing from the old days, apparently.
Shame is not a deterrent anymore.
The president announcing he's calling on Congress to suspend the federal gas tax, which is 18 cents for a gallon of regular, for 3 months. So conceivably, if they passed it July 1, they would run through the end of September. While the average price of gas has come down below $5 a gallon, the White House says this is designed to do everything possible to reduce costs for families, especially as the busy holiday travel season begins. President announcing he's calling on Congress to suspend the
political.
President announcing he's calling on.
These days, when news breaks, we're notified almost instantly. But imagine if that wasn't the case. Imagine if a major government change occurred and you didn't know for 2.5 years. Just think about that. Because that's exactly what happened to Black Americans when slavery ended, particularly Black Americans living in the South. President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation and declared all persons held as slaves be free on January 1st, 1863. But news didn't travel as fast back then as it does today. And slave owners surely didn't help spread the word, so many slaves weren't actually freed until 2.5 years later when federal troops arrived in Galveston, Texas to ensure all enslaved people be freed. It took from January 1st, 1863, all the way until June 19th, 1865, which is why for many Black Americans, Independence Day is not the 4th of July. It's Juneteenth, short for June 19th. The holiday honors the end of slavery in the United States and is considered the longest-running African-American holiday. And for many Black Americans, it is a time marked with celebrations, picnics, and family gatherings, a time of reflection and celebration. On June 17, 2021, President Biden signed a bill to finally federally recognize the holiday, bringing national and international attention to the already established celebration. And as more and more people learn about Juneteenth, Black families and communities across the country continue to embrace it as a day to remember the past and to celebrate their freedom.
What would it take to transition the whole world to sustainable energy? What kind of throughput would you actually need? And you need 100 gigafactories.
So 100 of these?
100 of these, yes.
That would make the United States...
No, the whole world.
The whole world?
The whole world. All energy.
That's it?
Yeah. What would it take to transition the whole world to
Show with Ron Howard and Jose Andres. Now, Ron, about making this film. I understand, even once you convinced Jose that you could make this film about him in World Central Kitchen, you had trouble getting some of your footage for the film. What happened?
Well, our team embedded with Jose and his key teammates in Navajo Nation and here in New York, covering COVID, other places. And I was outside the bubble, so I was nervously, I was remoting in, I was texting, I was saying, "What'd you shoot? What'd you get yesterday?" "Oh, well, we covered something in the morning." "That was it? That's all you did?" "Well, the trucks needed unloading, and there were just a lot of people gathered around, and so we put the camera down and we got going, and that's the spirit of it. It's it's just infectious, and I had to sort of say, hey, dude, I'm glad you pitched in, but you're there to tell a story, and let's get it. The other bit of direction.
So you stole his crew.
I mean, we are on a mission. We need to feed people. It's like, hey, yo, put the mic down. Put the camera down. And that's the beauty of it, that everybody is hands-on.
Well, now, Jose, what is, give us a call for action here. How can people help in their own way or collectively? What would you like to say to the people?
That, I realize, especially in Ukraine, that every one of you can become your own organization. You don't need to try to feed the world. You can do little things as helping an elderly couple in the supermarket. Make sure that they can put the shopping in the back of their car. Maybe picking up, use a piece of paper to keep your cities clean. Maybe going in the middle of, like it's happening in Ukraine, maybe you should come with me, Jean-Baptiste, that musicians are in every corner bringing hope to people just by playing a song. You see, everybody in this room, everybody in America has a talent that if you look within, you can put that talent to bring hope to others. We can all be part, not only of feeding America and feeding the world, but believing in longer tables, no higher walls. Together, we can change the world if we really believe in it.
Ron, after making this film, after spending all this time on this subject with Jose and World Central Kitchen, what do you want people to take from this film?
Well, I hope that they do recognize this sort of spirit of volunteerism. Just this idea that you don't have to dedicate your entire life to it, as Jose has, as his family has supported him in, but you really can make a difference simply by committing. And I think, again, that's why I wanted it to be this kind of origin story. It's amazing to see the journey. I mean, look, it's very cinematic. There's action, there's jeopardy. It's a good movie. But underneath it all, it really is about, look, the final scene, I don't want to give anything away, but I will, is this kid, this 10-year-old kid who's just helping. He just volunteers. Jose kind of deputizes him. You know anybody around here who needs meals? Yeah, I do. And he's just pedaling his bike, and our camera guy's got shots of this kid just leading, pointing things out. He was so proud of himself.
He wanted to be my translator.
Yes, that's right.
He said, I speak Spanish. I said, I speak Spanish too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I want to be in a movie.
Oh, well, we're going to do that, Jose. It's going to happen.
Who was going to tell me, in America, the American dream, who a guy like me can be saying that it's going to be on a night like today, next to Stephen Colbert and Ron Howard, and telling him, I want to be in a movie. I mean, all in America.
Jose, thank you. Ron, thank you. We Feed People is available May 27th on Disney+, and you can learn more about World Central Kitchen at WCK.org. Ron Howard and Jose Andres, everybody. We'll be right back with a performance by Lucius with Sheryl Crow and Celise. Stick around. Beautiful.
This group busts your brain, performing their current hit single, Hangar 18. Give it up for Megadeth.
Now, tonight, Vladimir Putin continues to wage a bloody crackdown on the sovereign country of Ukraine. And get this, 900 civilian bodies were recently found dead in and around Kyiv, the capital, including in mass graves and in the rubble, as the innocent Ukrainian people continue to be slaughtered on a massive scale. It's just like I've been saying, there needs to be a simple rule in life. If you invade a sovereign nation, you forfeit your right to lead any country, and you should forfeit your right to live. Period. It's why we need to provide Ukraine with all the weapons and support that they need so they can win this war. By the way, President Zelensky has been clear. He'd like Biden to do more. I've been very clear. No U.S. troops on the ground. and no more endless politicized wars. You know, the politicians, they get all gung-ho, charged up. They start these wars. They don't fight to win the war. They politicize the war, and then it ends up, well, being a disastrous pullout like the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan. According to Democrat Chris Coons of Delaware, he is now pushing to put U.S. forces on the ground in Ukraine. This is an awful idea. This cannot happen. Take a look.
In some public remarks this week, you said the country needs to talk about when it might be willing to send troops to Ukraine. You said if the answer is never, then we are inviting another level of escalation and brutality by Putin. Are you arguing that President Biden was wrong when he said he would not send troops to Ukraine? Are you asking him to set a red line?
Margaret, I think those of us in Congress who have a critical role in setting foreign policy and in advising the president in terms of his decisions as commander-in-chief need to look clearly at the level of brutality. This is a moment of enormous challenge for all of us.
Now, we need to learn the lessons from successes in the past, like the Reagan doctrine, the Trump doctrine, peace through strength, targeted strikes on our worst enemies. That's how Trump obliterated the ISIS caliphate, took out Baghdadi and Soleimani and the al-Qaeda leader in Yemen. Also tonight, Montana Senator Steve Daines is the first U.S. senator to visit Ukraine. He saw firsthand the mass graves in Bucha, and he joins us now to explain. Senator, I did see some of the footage you took, and I think you shared it with my team. We'll put it up on the screen. But I just want you, in your own words, to tell people what you saw on the ground while there.
Sean, these are images that nobody should ever have to see in their lifetime. I was taken from Kyiv up to Bucha. It's about 20 miles outside of Kyiv. As we were getting close to Bucha, you could see the brutality of the Russians leveling these residential complexes, small homes, apartment complexes. This is where women, children, moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas were just living their lives, and then they were brutally murdered by the Russians. We stepped onto some rubble. I reached down and picked up a little child's toy. Sean, I'm a father of 4. We have 3 grandchildren. There's probably some child that was playing with that toy at the moment when that tank blasted their house and killed the family. But then we were taken to the shallow graves. These graves contain hundreds of innocent civilians. This is graves full of women, of children. These were not soldiers. These were civilians. These were innocents, grandmas and grandpas. And were taken right to the edge of the graves. You could watch the investigators exhuming the body, shovel by shovel, taking the dirt out, pulling these black plastic bags out, taking them over to a tent where then they were opening up the plastic bags and examining the bodies and looking for a cause of death. They opened a bag up. They asked me just to take a glimpse, a brief look at it. I could see a bullet wound in the back of the head of a man. I saw the body of a woman in one of the bags. Sean, it is brutal. These are war crimes. And it was very important, I believe, to have a U.S. official on the ground. Do you realize, Sean, there have been officials, prime ministers and presidents from 10 different countries have gone to Ukraine. There was noticeable absence. Nobody from the United States, in terms of United States elected official or appointed official in cabinet, has been there. I thought it was important to make that journey. It was a harrowing journey, Sean. I was escorted by actually Ukrainian pastors who got me across the border. I walked across the border, got in a car, and took a train from Lviv to Kyiv. It took about 9 hours by train during the night. That was last Wednesday night. I arrived in Kyiv Thursday morning. But the gentleman that was escorting me is a former member of parliament of Ukraine, also a leader in the faith movement in Ukraine. He said, Senator, this train may take 7 hours. It might take 9 hours to get to Kyiv because there'll be missile activity tonight as we travel across Ukraine. And the conductor of the train will be slowing down, sometimes stopping, sometimes making moves, rerouting because of the missiles. But I was so grateful to be on that train, to get to Kyiv, and to stand with the Ukrainians and see firsthand what's going on with the brutality of the Russians.
So President Zelensky accused world leaders of empty rhetoric in saying never again to genocide. And it's been said many times. Is he right? Because it sounds right to me.
Listen, these are atrocities that have been committed that are unimaginable. We were talking about this with some of the police officers who were standing there with us in Bucha and the side of that shallow grave, and they told me Ukrainians will never bury somebody with their hands tied behind their backs. But these members of the Bucha community were killed with their hands tied behind their backs. They were executed. And that police officer, by the way, I want to show you something, Sean. He has a 7-year-old daughter. He showed me a picture of his daughter. He's very proud of her. And with tears in his eyes, he said, my daughter wanted to have this wristband. She made it for you. It's of Ukrainian colors. She wants to thank you for coming to Ukraine. And she made these for the police officers there who are faced with the terrible task of accounting for these members of their community that were brutally butchered by the Russians.
All the West, NATO, Western Europe needs to do two things. One, provide Zelensky and Ukraine the weaponry to win the war. They're willing to fight, but they don't need our boots on the ground. Give them the weapons and stop putting $1 billion into Putin's pocket every day by Western Europe importing Russian oil and gas. Senator, I know it's hard to describe what you've seen. The world needs to hear it. I'm glad you went. Thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you for being with us.
Live from the Bommarito Digital Studio.
Happy Wednesday, St. Louis. We think we're live.
I don't know.
We are live.
Well, hold on. Yep, so far.
Good.
But boy, the next 15 minutes could bring a lot of changes.
It really
so,
could.
Hold on.
Okay.
We were having some technical issues, so here's the real fun. And I like this sensation right now.
What?
We're not sure if we're actually streaming or not.
Yeah.
So we might be live, we might not. I kind of like that. That keeps the energy up. Because you have to be careful.
Yeah.
You can't talk like we would talk if we were off mic.
Right.
But you do feel some liberty because you're like, we might not be on.
I think we're live.
Are we really? No.
Yep, here we go.
That kind of sucks the energy
We're
out
there.
of it. The next sentence we're going to say is so juicy or so salacious that we will literally reach behind our back and go, and turn the microphone off, so that on the off chance that somehow, unbeknownst to us, the mic comes up, it's turned off, so you're not going to hear whatever juicy bit follows after.
We do that a decent amount.
So when you say, what would we talk about?
Yeah.
Well, think about those microphone off moments. And it's not, listen, it doesn't mean we're like trashing coworkers or something like that.
We usually are, though.
No, we're not. Well, Kent. But other than that, no. It just means we're saying something that we probably would not say quite so freely on the air.
To the millions of viewers.
Millions.
Millions.
As we like to say on Facebook, potentially billions. Because it's Facebook, so you never know.
That's true. This could go viral.
This could be the one that goes nuts.
I doubt it is.
The
but
26 of you watching right now, just the start.
Start sharing. Just see how many we can get up to.
Just
we don't
keep
know.
hitting share and tell other people that you're sharing it with to keep hitting share. That's how the stuff goes nuts.
It sure does.
And if it, I'll tell you what, if it reaches 1 million views, we'll tell you what we're talking about when the microphones are off.
What were we talking about? I don't even remember.
I don't, but it did happen once during the show, but I don't remember what it was. Do you? I honest to goodness don't.
Well, I
if
turned mine
it,
off because you were talking about one of our guests.
I was? Oh, yeah. But
I was worried she was still on.
No, so Laura interviewed, Laura did what do you call it? A remote interview. It used to be satellite, but today I think it was Zoom.
Yes.
With the two hosts of a new CBS show.
Which I'm super excited about.
And one of the two, we were excited to talk to both of them, of course, because this is a new cool show. It's like parents and kids dancing together when they have no dancing background. What could go wrong? But one of the two hosts, you know her body of work. You knew her, what was it? Step Up?
Step Up.
Step Up. With the man she married,
Channing Tatum. Yes.
Right? So after that segment was over and we got to the break, I continued the conversation about those two guests, and Laura was like, what if they're still on? What if they can still hear? And I was like, I'd probably ask them that to their face.
How her divorce proceedings went?
No, the way I phrased it, to be clear, was, how come you and Channing Tatum couldn't make it work?
You could ask that about anyone.
Is that not fair?
No.
Even if you're a celebrity, you can't.
Is that fair? You tell me.
Are you saying that no celebrity's ever been asked that by a reporter?
They have.
Yeah.
But that's kind of mean.
Okay, you're right. You're right. What if I phrased it in a more cordial way? What if I said, you've been very open about your past relationships.
But she hasn't.
I don't. Well, see, that's the thing. I don't know. I just sort of assume, especially somebody like Channing Tatum. I would have said, maybe they're great friends. Maybe it ended very cordially. I don't know.
I don't either.
I wasn't. My intent was not to be mean. It was just kind of because that's a phrase I've heard you say is, well, if so and so and so and so can't make it work, then what hope is there for the rest of us?
Yeah, but I talk behind people's backs. I wouldn't ask them to their face.
But it is. There's couples you root for, and you're like, oh, how could that? That didn't look. They're both beautiful people. This would be a wonderful life.
Yes.
And it just doesn't work.
Yes. I am excited that J-Lo and Ben Affleck. Did you hear they're engaged again?
Can you help me with something about this? Because I am, you're more plugged into the celebrity stuff than I am.
I am.
I do know that they were together previously, and that people were super excited about that. I know people are super excited that they're back together again.
Yes.
Did they have children in the previous relationship together?
No, they don't have any.
Okay, because I swear I saw a headline somewhere this morning that said something about Ben and J-Lo's. It probably meant Ben's kids and J-Lo's kids react to...
Yeah. She has twins, a boy and a girl, Max and Emmy, with the gentleman she was with after Ben Affleck.
But pre-A-Rod,
Yes, Mark Anthony, the singer.
Oh my gosh, yes. Which was actually a fairly long...
I think they were married like 7 or 8 years. So she has twins with him. Of course, Ben married Jennifer Garner. They had 2 daughters, Serafina... I'm blanking on the other one. And Samuel, a boy.
How you're not on the TMZ payroll, I don't know.
It's ridiculous.
This is impressive.
I know. So they're back together. They don't have any kids together, though.
But they are, is it like a confirmed engagement?
It is confirmed.
Did I read somewhere that she still has the first engagement ring that he gave her?
If she does, I mean, I don't blame her. It's a light pink. This one is green. A green diamond.
The stone is green?
It's green.
Okay.
Not an emerald, a green diamond.
A green diamond.
Yes.
Which... judging by the two of them, is probably out of my price range.
Over $8 million.
Ah, that's close, though. I could get close.
I couldn't.
I couldn't either.
But I'll just look at it in the pictures.
Is that a new thing? Green colored diamonds?
So J-Lo's lucky color is green.
Oh, well, see, he knows her.
He does.
He cares about
yes.
her. This is good.
I care about them.
This is good. Do you think this is going to work out?
Yes, I do.
Was she engaged to A-Rod?
Yeah.
I thought she was. I thought so.
For a long time.
Yep.
And then COVID kept postponing their wedding, and then there were cheating allegations on his part.
Not on her part?
No.
She's way too good for that.
I hope. So that's what's going on with celebrities. And
what is the lower third?
We're not sure. These celebrities might have allergies.
Oh, nicely done.
Or they may not.
Putting the train back on the tracks.
Yeah, we're supposed to talk a little bit about allergies, but
We
they're
are.
kind of boring. This conversation was way more exciting.
And people lie. Look, as soon as we start talking about allergies, look at the numbers.
Yes.
They're like, well, J-Lo chatter's over. Swipe.
Love it.
I will admit, I'm guilty of doing half the stuff that this article we did on allergies today says you're not supposed to do.
Duh, because it's convenient to walk inside and not shower. It is convenient to not vacuum your rug 17 times a day.
Accurate, all accurate. It's nice to open your windows this time of year. I did it last night. I knew we wouldn't have overnight rain. I knew that if I closed everything up when I woke up, we would be fine. But that does allow all the allergens. Your screen is not stopping the allergens. Trust me on that. We're talking microscopic particles here. They're getting in the house. And once they're in, man, they're in the carpet. They're on top of the fan blades. They're on the comforter on the bed. Yeah. But I will say, because I know you've got some allergy things. I have kind of seasonal allergies, environmental allergies. When I mow the lawn the first couple times each year, it's like, whoosh. So I am pretty careful about being conscious of that. Like when I come in from mowing the lawn, I want to get cleaned up pretty quickly. And the last thing I'm going to do is go sit on the couch or go lay in the bed because I know all of the clippings and trimmings and sweat and pollen and all that blech is right there with me. So I want to get rid of all that and then kind of clean slate it.
You have never done an allergy test, though.
I haven't, and you have.
I have.
I would be fascinated to see what the results are because I think everybody thinks, or at least wonders, I wonder if I'm allergic. Sometimes when I eat blah, 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 I get a little, I wonder if I'm allergic to it. So tell me how it works.
So I did it as an adult, like since I've been in St. Louis. I know for kids, sometimes they'll do it on their back.
Right.
For me, they did it all throughout my arm.
And it's like a grid?
It's a grid.
Okay.
And they prick you with all these different things. And I think
and
they're
is that like
close
all
to
at
30.
once? Like they push it down, or is it like bing, 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 bing?
Individual.
Oh, that sounds great.
Oh, it's so nice.
Sounds
And they
awesome.
take it out of this like thing of test tubes, and they just barely hit you, and then you have to sit there long enough to see if there's a reaction.
Which is how long? Half an hour?
No,
Less.
shorter than that.
Okay.
You know right away.
All right.
So for me, I found out that I'm allergic to virtually all trees, all grasses, dogs, cats, and all these other things that you've never even thought of. But I have a dog, and I grew up with a cat. And it did go nuts, but I would much rather have the companionship of my dog and sneeze than not have him.
And Papa Zyrtec once a day or something?
Exactly. So we're all fine.
So any weird, is that all environmental, or can that be like food stuff that they test for too?
My person never did the food stuff.
Okay. Because that would be, I would love to know, like, because I love like cheese and milk. And wouldn't surprise me a bit if I have some kind of intolerance to all that.
Yeah, that would
wouldn't be great. Yeah.
But then I did allergy shots for 4 years during my time here in St. Louis, and I got to the point where I was in a maintenance stage where I could give them to myself.
Okay.
Have you ever given yourself shots?
No.
Okay.
No.
And I
no.
know some people do every day, and I know it's something you just get used to. It was very hard for me. It was Wednesday afternoons, and when I did it at the doctor's office, they did it in the back of your arm.
Okay.
It has to be like a fatty area. And then within minutes, it just got so hot and red. And then it went down.
Within minutes of them doing
it?
it? Okay.
And then it went down. Well, obviously, I can't give myself in a shot in the back of my arm, so I would have to give them to myself in my stomach. And same thing.
Yowza.
They would get big and red and hot.
For a little bit, and then...
Yeah, it was just psyching yourself up to do this.
That's particularly you. No offense, but you know what I'm saying?
Thanks.
Particularly you.
I'm okay
you're not,
with shots.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah, like I didn't flinch with any of the COVID shots. They damn near killed me, but I didn't flinch.
Perhaps you should clarify what she had, like some swelling and stuff.
Yeah, just reactions.
Not like you wound up in the hospital because you got a COVID shot. Let's just be clear.
Correct. Just a lot of swelling.
Well, I'm impressed that you were. How long did you have to give yourself a shot in the gut once a week?
I did it 2 years.
So with the goal with something like that, the 4 years you did it with them and then the 2 years you did it on your own, is the goal that at the end of that you don't have to do it again, that you don't have to take allergy medicine again, that you've like cured yourself of these allergies?
That was the goal, to build up a tolerance, and I'd say it kind of worked, but what super duper worked for me was getting my tonsils out. I think if we would have gone that route from the get-go, I don't think I would have had to do everything that I then had to do.
Okay, the more I think about this, the more it makes sense.
Yeah,
initially I was
everything's
like,
right here.
what's the connection? Now I got it.
All right
Okay.
here. And my allergist is the one who took out my tonsils. Gosh, that recovery was awful.
That's an interesting sentence. My allergist is the one that took out my tonsils. I guess they do that.
Yeah.
It would make sense that they would.
He's an ENT, and no, honestly, after that was done, I stopped getting sick. Because back when I was doing the allergy shots and everything, I was just used to waking up and feeling crummy at least 3 days a week.
Guaranteed.
And I thought that's just the way the world was.
Must be how everybody lives.
Yeah, you're always sneezing, your throat always hurts, your eyes are always watering. Why not?
Can I ask a weird question?
Okay.
Could you, once recovery was done, because I know that's not a pleasant process for adults in particular, could you, like when you swallow, when you eat, could you feel a difference? Like, can you feel, oh yeah, there used to be something back there and now there's not? Or was it basically invisible to you?
No.
That might be there might be ENTs right now that are like, what a yutz.
Yeah,
but I wondered, like, especially somebody like you where they inflame a lot.
Yeah.
I wondered if you could literally feel a difference.
Not enough that it rings a bell that there was a difference after a while, but best health decision I've ever made in my life was getting my tonsils out. I will say that.
That's fascinating. That kind of makes me want to do it.
I wouldn't if your tonsils are fine.
They are. The other thing I wonder about, because you talked about I'm allergic to every tree, I'm allergic to grass.
It's gotten me out of a lot of yard work, if that's where you were going.
No. Yeah, that we can talk about that if you want. I wonder if through the history of mankind, has that always been a thing for people? When we were a more outdoorsy species, when we didn't, because let's face it, we spend the vast majority of our time in controlled environments right now. When we were out in the elements more, either because we were working the land or we were literally living outside.
Like hunters and gatherers.
Yeah. Do you think every spring and fall they were like, oh boy, tuk-tuk, here it comes?
I think they didn't have shoes, so they were more focused
They're more concerned
on like that.
about
what they're going to step on than if they're sneezing.
But let's not.
I could be wrong.
But
I
not,
don't know.
And then the other thing you have to ask yourself, and meteorologists actually have very serious conversations about this. There's papers written about it. Are allergens getting worse? Is allergy season getting longer? Is it more exacerbated? I've read a number of studies, and the general consensus at the moment seems to be that because the warm season is longer now than it was, say, 50 years ago. In other words, the amount of time between your last freeze of the spring and your first freeze of the fall, so the growing season is now longer, which it is. The stats don't lie. At the very least, the period of time during which allergy sufferers are suffering is longer. And there's also some, there's a lot of pools of thought. More carbon dioxide in the air means plants tend to grow larger. Because that's their food, right? They bring in carbon dioxide, they pump out oxygen.
I mean,
so
I guess. So do they?
They do. It's a whole thing. It's a fairly well-established thing.
All right.
So with more carbon dioxide in the air, maybe they're growing larger. They're generating more pollen. I mean, one thing's pretty clear, it's not better than it was 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
What I hate is, this is something I just always dealt with growing up, but my sister never did. And I was always so jealous of that. What I hate, though, is now both of my nieces have really bad allergies.
Can I tell you what I hate?
Your kids do too?
Yes, and to the point now that every night at the dinner table, everybody gets, we call it what do we? I guess we call it medicine. Who's going to get out medicine tonight? The reality is most of it is multivitamins. The kids get a Chewy. The girls get a gummy Chewy that's some kind of probiotic or something. I take like a Centrum or whatever. Stephanie takes the same, you know, like prenatal thing that she's been on since she was 20. We all have our things. But now, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of my 6 kids take some kind of allergy something every day. I don't like that because, and my wife is an RN, so I defer to her. She is much smarter than me. But I just think, so what you're telling me is they just have to do this for the rest of their life?
Are they ever going to officially grow out of it? Chances are, no.
I don't like that.
I don't either.
And it depends on the kid. Sometimes it's a little Zyrtec for the older ones. Sometimes it's a little cup. It's like 5 ml of Allegra, children's Allegra. But I just don't, I'm like, what's the end game here?
To manage each day.
And then you think, and I do have to say, anecdotally, I've seen it. If you miss one, you're out and about or you're traveling or something, and you miss a dose, like the next day.
It's awful.
You can tell.
You definitely can.
I'm like, and I think I even asked an allergist on the show once, is there a possibility that my kids build up a tolerance, like their bodies build up a tolerance to Allegra or Zyrtec or whatever?
What they say.
So that eventually it stops, it's not as useful, and now you got to take more? This was I think an allergist that specialized in kids.
Okay.
And they said, nah, not really. They didn't have stats to back that up. But that's the kind of stuff I worry about. Like, I don't want to. You're 8. I don't want to start you on a regimen of allergy medication that you got to take every day for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's sad. And used to, allergy pills, a lot of them were by prescription.
Yep. And I'm sure some still are.
Yeah, but thank goodness Zyrtec and Allegra are now over the counter. I mean, that's truly been a game changer for me.
And the 1 a day thing. Like, I won't, I don't take it unless I'm going somewhere where I know there's a trigger. For example, the in-laws have a Himalayan, which is a beautiful cat, but the hairiest breed of any animal ever on Earth. I don't know if you're aware of that. And they just like walking through a room generates this cloud of silvery and brown fur, just whoosh. And so I know 12 hours or so before we're gonna hang out with them, I start doing it. And I'll do it on a 24-hour schedule until we're back home.
What's the cat's name?
Misha. No, Misha was the predecessor, Silky. Silky is the current cat. They were both Himalayans.
Darn Silky and Misha.
Not a nice cat either. And I say that because my in-laws would agree. Misha, its predecessor, was a very sweet cat. Silky, not really having anything to do with people.
Well, that's fine.
I mean, they're cats. They don't, generally speaking, they don't.
They're okay. So that's what's going on here.
Yep.
Should we look latest on the weather coming up?
We should
Do we
talk
need to
about
know
that
anything?
too. I'm going to jump over to the radar super quick. I will tell you that what's happened so far, Laura and I were talking about this before we went on the air, has done us a favor. So let me explain that. The fact that Metro St. Louis has already seen, and at this point in the Metro East continues to see. Ooh, Greg brought up weather graphics. What's on it, Greg? Is it radar?
Here, I have mine.
Oh, that's right. I guess I could look at the screen. So you see that there's rain east of the Mississippi. That's already moved through downtown and much of the metro. So the way I described this to Laura was, think about a boxer. Think of the atmosphere as a boxer. And this boxer now has already been through a couple of rounds.
Yes.
So they're not as strong and as fit and raring to go as they were. Yeah, they're a little fatigued.
Are they bleeding?
So now, wasn't that bad.
Okay.
These weren't really strong storms, but there may be a little hail here and there. So now when the next round comes in, which really the next couple of rounds are the ones we're more concerned about, the atmosphere's already been worked over in the spots where it rained. So does that lessen the threat of severe weather in those spots that have already seen rain? Yes, to an extent it does. Now, those storms did not, for the most part, hit the southernmost portions of the viewing area. And I can tell you right now that just west of Rolla, let me get my bearings here, actually into Phelps County now, we've got a severe thunderstorm warning because there's a storm just outside the viewing area that's starting to move into the southwestern portion of the viewing area. It's not a tornado warning, but there's a severe thunderstorm warning up for that cell, which should probably be moving, let me hit play here. This will probably be moving into Rolla, leading edge in the next 20 to 30 minutes or so. The severe part of the storm, probably a little later than that, 45, 50 minutes or so. But again, this is like the Rolla area, they weren't worked over with initial rain like the Metro was. So those points to the south are still pretty juicy, still pretty ripe for some severe thunderstorms. And a lot can still happen as the day unfolds. If all of this kind of collapses and we get some midday sunshine,
is that a good thing?
That's a bad thing, because
Okay.
that's going to warm things up, that's like the boxer going to his corner and recharging and getting something to drink for a second and kind of getting his legs under him again. So next important timeline, I would say, is at 11:30, the Storm Prediction Center will issue their next severe weather threat outlook. So when we show that map that shows level 1 risk, level 2 risk, level 3 risk, we'll get a new one of those at 11:30. And I wouldn't be surprised if the northwestern edge of the threat zone kind of gets cut back a little bit because of this initial rain. That's a good thing. It's a good thing. Doesn't mean you're going to be rain-free for the rest of the day, but it means maybe your odds of severe are a little bit lower. There's just so much rotation. There's a lot of ingredients there that you need to have in order to have some longer track tornadoes and some stronger tornadoes, especially south and east of St. Louis. So we cannot turn our back on this atmosphere today. We're going to watch it closely.
I'm a little stressed out.
Don't stress out.
Okay.
It's fine. Here's the thing, and this is why we started, we started talking about Wednesday
last
on
week,
Friday
right?
of last week.
Yeah,
I think it was the first time
while.
we started thinking, that could be interesting. We should keep an eye on that. But that happens frequently, and about half the time it's not a thing, and about half the time it is a thing. So the reason we start harping on it early is so you can think through, okay, if it's the middle of the day Friday, where am I? Where would I go if the sirens went off? How can I get the warning? That's particularly important. How can I not be sitting on the sidelines when a warning comes in and I don't even know what's happening?
Yeah.
We don't want you to be that guy or gal. So just think about where you are. Think about what you would do if the worst were to happen. And as long as you've thought that through and you have a plan, you're going to be fine. Okay?
Yes.
It's not a freak out mode. It's storm mode.
Failure to plan is planning to fail.
Bingo. There it is. Have a plan. Busch Stadium, they have a plan. They worked with the National Weather Service. They had a bad storm in 2006, first year in the new stadium. They said, we got to figure this out.
Yes.
We need a plan. Weather Service went over, helped them calculate a plan. Your school, your workplace probably has a plan as well. So ask the question.
Do we
if
have
you
a
need
plan?
To know.
What's our plan?
We do. Go ask the meteorologist what you should do.
Okay.
I'll guide you to the exits.
On that note, I'm going to leave.
It wouldn't be a bad idea.
Okay.
Get while the getting's good.
I'll try to.
And again, first warning of the day up down in southwestern Phelps County. So storm teams all over it. We'll keep you posted.
All right. You stay extra, St. Louis.
People like these legislators are creating a very scary time for the trans community where I just don't feel safe.
There are folks out there who would like to legislate away the existence of transgender people like me. These laws are particularly targeting trans youth, denying participation in sports, denying access to medically necessary life-saving healthcare.
Hi, I'm Jacob, and I'm 11 years old and transgender. This means that my sex assigned at birth is female, but I identify and am a boy.
My hopes for Jacob's future are that he can live unburdened by the struggle that we're going through now. That he can live where he wants, he can go to school where he wants, he can have the career that he chooses, he can raise a family in any state and not have to worry about being discriminated against.
My daughter Gia came out just before her 13th birthday. She's now 17, about to graduate from high school, and she has been a leader in her school, in her clubs, in sports. When I think about all of these bills that are coming out in state legislatures, I can't help but think of a time when Black people faced similar discrimination and codes, and women did not have rights and also faced discrimination.
Today, we have, for the first time in 4 years, a president and a vice president who are saying unequivocally, trans rights are human rights. We have a House that passed the Equality Act.
We do need legal protection, but we also do need the kinds of protection that the law can't reach, and that's the heart.
One thing I think that we really need to do better at is telling the full stories of trans lives. You're very rarely seeing the stories of just everyday lives. We need to see more of that.
Representation is extremely important because a lot of people like to embody and emulate people that they look up to. For example, looking up to people like Laverne Cox has really impacted my life. It's made me see that I can make a huge impact on this earth as well.
As her mother, as a member of her family, we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that this world is a better and safer place for our Gia.
We need more people to call their senators, their House members. We need more people to call their state lawmakers and speak out against these anti-trans actions. What trans youth want to do, they want to go to school, they want to play sports, they want to be on a team, they want to go to the doctor and be able to get the kind of care that they deserve. No matter how much you try to legislate against us, we are still going to be here.
To impeach former President